Hey guys, this is Eric Weingartner with Weingartner Racing. Look at it. I finally got them here. These are the aluminum trick flow double hump heads. And not only that, look at it. It's the original double hump heads with the accessory bolt holes. I'm going to flow each and do a comparison. These all came about because Nick with DZ Performance, he's doing a dyno thing on these heads. So we sent them down here to me to have them flow tested so to have that information to go with the dyno testing. I believe he's putting these on a 350, but watch his channel and he'll tell you more about it. If it's not a 350, it's a 383. I just can't remember. But anyway, he should be dynoing it soon. He said as soon as he gets this back, he'll be dynoing with the aluminum heads on the engine for sure. And then he'll switch over to the 186s. So watch his channel, DZ Performance, to see what the actual dyno numbers they make. But I'll be doing a little thing just showing you the flow numbers and show you different things about the head so you get to see the inside. I didn't think I'd ever get to see this head, to be quite honest with you, because for so long people have been asking me about the head, but no one ever ordered the head, because I am a trick flow dealer. No one ever ordered the head, nor was, and then if I shoot them a price, I wasn't interested. So we'll talk about this whole head today. So first off, if you notice, this is the outside edge. So this is what it looks like in the aluminum section. You got your two humps, you got your accessory bolt holes. This is the factory GM 186 head. If you notice, it looks almost identical. It has your 3 bolt holes and it's got the double humps. Now, before someone starts commenting, not all double humps were this way. If you went back and watched my first double hump video, you'll see all it had was those and it didn't have the accessory bolt holes. Only certain ones did. These 186s do. So, of course, Trick Flow, which is smart of them, put the accessory bolt holes on to make it match. Now, not only that, if you look at the back side, you'll see it looks like this. You've got one hole. Now, why is that important? Because that's how they were from the factory. So that's actually a pretty good reference. Now, I do also give them some credit here because if you notice, you got your casting line here, which was really indication of stock ones. Now, obviously, these are aluminum, but if you were to paint them like the Chevrolet orange, it would look very, very similar. But it, of course, has some upgrades. So, for instance, there's your casting line on the back here. One difference, look at that. That's a little bit different. So it's in the same spot, but it's not squared off as much, which is different. But the biggest one that you could easily spot would simply have a person pull a spark plug, because the old style heads, they used a tapered seat plug. That is not what these ones used. These ones use a more modern design, which of course is right here somewheres. Yeah, here we go. They use these style, the 3/4 inch reach with a flat washer. Now, oddly, it does look like they might have a little taper there, so maybe you could run the LS ones. In case you're wondering, I'm talking about the LS. I'm trying to look for one while I'm talking. There it is. The LS plugs just have a little taper here, but most likely your recommendation is this. Anyway, let's look at the port. Let me change its view. I'll show you this view first, actually. If you notice from this side compared to the stock one, I've got my flow plate on here, there is some differences. So this one, of course, it's got a round hole, and if you notice the stock, has your much bigger exhaust crossover. But it's still there. If the intake's on, no one would ever notice. The other thing, though, is when you look up in here, obviously it says Trick Flow, and you've got your Trick Flow part number here. So this part's underneath the valve covers. Obviously, they're different. It comes standard with screw-in studs, which, if you didn't know, they didn't come with screw-in studs. Most of the double humps didn't. So these have been converted. In order to do that, you have to pull the studs out from the factory ones, and you then have to drill and tap the hole, and then grind off the top to make the same height with the guide plate on. These have been modified. And by the way, you can tell the part number is different here. The other thing that kind of sucks is on a stock one, it goes into water. So there's a water patch through the top here. Aftermarket heads do not have that. This one goes into absolutely nothing, so you just put anti-seize on the threads on the exhaust one. On the intake, you do have to put thread sealer because they would go through the intake port. They do, actually. So you gotta put thread sealer on that. But that's it. As far as exhaust side, let's take a look at that. Let's run this view. This is what they look like. It's a much better looking port than that. But they're similar. Very, very similar. So anyway, let me show you the chamber view so you can get a better idea. And yes, I'm gonna give flow numbers for both heads. Well, almost. Let me show you one more thing while I'm here on this view. I noticed this because I always flow this cylinder. This is the cylinder I flow. So you have to remove the regular valve spring to put on the check spring so that you can flow ahead. And that's when I spotted this. The intake came with this spring cup, which is nothing wrong with that. The exhaust on this one just had a shim. And I was like, whew, looks like Trick Flow forgot that to put the same thing in all the rest. I don't think they did, because look at the one next to it, which the lighting is not the greatest, but there's no spring cup there. So it looks like what they've done, try to give you a better view, there you go. It looks like what they've done is just on these inside pair here, they did not put on a spring cup. You might say, why didn't they? They left all that out. Because if they had the spring cup, it would be entering, the spring cup's wider than this, so it would be entering this area. So in other words, to make it easier for a person to bolt it onto their engine, the two inside ones don't have spring cups. The other thing, since I'm on this view, I am not a fan of these seals. I've said this many times. Now, do they seal? Absolutely they seal. There's a much wider area here for to contact the valve stem, so they definitely do remove oil and they do grade it out of the sealing. The catch is they're not metal clad like the ones I use, so what can happen is if the spring dances too much, which the cup kind of locates it anyway, eventually these could pop off, and I just don't like the idea of having metal floating around in it. Does it happen? Pretty rare unless you have your setup wrong. So in this case, their spring sits directly in this cup and everything's fine. Most times when I see this, they have no locator, so the spring actually makes contact with the seal, pops off this top ring, and it's in the oil somewhere. So I'm just not a fan of those, mostly because of that. But did they seal? Absolutely. Okay, now to change views. This is the view of the chamber. Now, this chamber here is a much smaller size than stock, and let me explain. It's actually CNC ported, which I don't know how well the camera's gonna pick this up, but this is CNC ported. And they claim it's 60 cc's as far as size-wise, which is great, because if you're actually putting these on a 327, you're actually gonna have some compression ratio. So you might say, well, how does that compare to the stock ones? These are the 186s again. And the 186s are actually 64 cc chambers. Can you tell this little step here? This is the bigger chamber version. So if you do the other ones, like a 461, those ones, this whole part here, the deck goes all the way to right here, making it 62 cc's. In this case, these are the 64 cc ones. So just a little bit of bonus knowledge for you. Not all are that way. Obviously, you can mill them down and get them there too. But the 291s or 291s are that way. The 462s might be that way. 461s definitely are not. They're, like I said, the deck's all the way here, so the chamber's slightly smaller. Anyway, this one, the Trick Flow here, if you also notice on our port side, looking at it, just looking at our intake port, besides this chamber, I do have to, just want to point this out. I know why maybe you put the spark plug in the same spot as the stock one, but that's way away. Usually in aftermarket ones, we have the spark plug here, not over here in the intake, over here and towards the center. So it's kind of different, but maybe they're just trying to keep it in the same location. So if you swap them directly from double humps, you get them closer. However, even saying that, if you look at it, it's close to the same distance from the deck. But to me, it looks like the actual spark plug is closer to the deck than it is with the stock ones. In other words, take the bottom thread here to the deck here, even though I know you got the spark here. It looks like this one, it's further down deeper than this one, the new one. But that's just me. As far as the chamber looks good. The port has this vane. Now, this was a weird one for me too. Yes, it's got the vane, and if you notice how it kind of comes this way, but it's hard to see this, but you see how it doesn't go directly straight? It's got this lump right there. You see that? So usually we'd have like a triangle that comes off and ends here, where it's tapering and getting smaller as it gets towards the seat. This actually gets smaller, then bigger right through there. So I don't know if that's some trick that they used, and I'm sure they tested it to see. I haven't seen that too much. Usually it's a manufacturing thing. So it's not something they intentionally put in there. It's just a manufacturing thing when they made that port that they had to add that extra material to keep the core all together. So that's different. The valve job itself looks nice. Nice. And it's got CNC bowl blending. That's what you're seeing here. It looks like it's done by hand, and that's a CNC machine. Also, same thing done on the exhaust. You can barely see it because of the lighting. So yeah, nice. It's got 202 valves and 1/600 exhaust valves. It's got a big back cut on that right there on this Freya valves. Now, Trick Flow uses Freya valves, and I might explain some of the cost, which I can't spin it around. There you go. But they're more expensive. These are the 6000 series. Freya valves are typically more expensive than other stainless steel models. So anyway, there's that. To the 186s, just to give you an idea, that vane does not exist. You can tell there's no vane in the stock one. Nope, none at all. So let me take my light and put it over in the 186s so I can show you the difference there. Here's the 186s. Now, a couple things to point out from this. Typically, they had 194 intake valves and 1500 exhaust valves. These have had a valve job redone, not by me, to a 202 1600. I don't know where Nick took these to get done, but he did this. As far as the port work, he also did this because, as you know, I don't port cast iron heads. So he did this. I think he just spent it a little bit of time. I think he allocates himself about an hour to do the whole thing. So he does the whole thing in an hour, which is moving pretty good. There's a couple things about this. You could tell he changed the guides. So the guides have been changed. So you got new guides. It's not like a liner. It's actual brand new guide. So they cut out the whole new one and put new ones in. 202 1600s. Except for these are the valves he asked me to float with. His valve has no back cut. So the Lola flow probably isn't as good, partly because of that. Also, he had the heads milled 10,000s. That's the way that's written there. But the port job's not that bad. Now, here's something about factory cast iron heads that I can tell you. There's water between here. So between the exhaust and the intake bowl, there's water. So as much as you'd like to keep this go straight down, you can't. You're going to be in the water. That is not a problem with aftermarket heads. It's solid aluminum all the way through here. So you ain't got to worry about busting through, and that's why the bowl can be in better shape. Speaking of, these are the sizes for the stuff on the small block Trick Flow one. 88% throat, bowl's 95%. Its pinch is 1.7, or sorry, yeah. Ooh, I might have had that wrong. This is written in the wrong spot. But the pinch is 1.75 inches. So really, really small, but these are only 175 cc head. Ooh, something else I don't like about this head. I hate captured push rod slots like this, because you just doesn't feel like you have as much movement, especially you're now for sure stuck with a 5/16 push rod, which most of you are going to run that way anyway, but I hate having aluminum around it. I'd rather be something like that. Now, yes, it's captured, but only here at the top, so you can actually ream this out to make room if you wanted, which we used to have to do so that you get more play, especially in circle track stuff, to make the guide plates kind of work better sometimes. But anyway, there's that. Let's show you the flow numbers and be done. I just realized I said it wrong. Nick's actually going to dyno test these on a 400 small block Chevy. So that's the one that's already been having the 882s heads that are 2-barrel heads with the smaller valves, like the 186 intake valves. He's going to switch, I think, to these, then to those. But yeah, it's a 400 small block Chevy. Yeah, there's no steam holes, but there you go. So I messed that up. Here are the flow numbers. Now, this was on my Signs Digital 680 bench. I got a 430 bore, which is what it's going to be on anyway. So we'll start off with the Trick Flows. Here's the numbers from the Trick Flow. This is the true numbers. This is what Trick Flow claims is the actual real stuff. 400, 229, really good. Peak flow is at 500 at 249.6. Let's call it 250. Drops to 243 thereafter, and the 800's down to 240. Josh run at 800 lift can what they said anyway. But yeah, really strong there at 5 at 250. Exhaust side, 400, it's 155 or 156, and it peaks at 187. Now, this is without an exhaust pipe. I don't flow with the exhaust pipe. That just cheats your numbers up. You might say, well, how's that compared to these old deals? Now, remember, these have had port work. Got a 202 valve, and these are from the factory. So what's the difference? Boom, this is the difference. 400, it goes 205. Now, remember, these valves don't have a back cut, so if you added a back cut, you might have got it to 215. You probably would have lost 5 CFM here, though. It peaks at 228, 29 at 500, and then it kind of just holds there and drops a little bit. That's about it. Not too good there. Having the no back cut helps the peak flow, hurts that one. So that should have been a 215. Regardless, though, if you compare that to the Trick Flow, 229 at 4 to a 206, you're down quite a bit. And at 5, 228 to a 250 almost. I mean, that's more than 20 CFM gain having the aftermarket one. So that's a big pickup. What about the exhaust? The stock one does 160 at 4, 161, and peaks at 178. So it's actually flows more at 4, looks like. Yes, it does. The stock head flows 161 at 4 compared to the trick flows 156 at 4. So the stock head actually outflows it at 400 lift, but you look at the peak flows, 179 versus 187. Now this has been ported, obviously, so he got to give him a little bit of credit there, because he's not entirely stock. But it did outflow him at 400 valve lift. We'll just go through it real quick. 49 to a 51, trick flow win. 104 to a 101, trick flow loss. Yep. And then 137 stock, trick flow 135 loss. See when it actually starts winning. How about 500, 171 on the trick flow? Yep. From 500 on, it beats the stock one. But below that, no. So anyway, there's the flow numbers. The dyno results will be available. You have to watch DZ Performance channel and watch Nick do his talk about it and power stuff. I know I got to get these shipped off here in like 5 minutes, but they'll be off to him, and you'll get to see him on the dyno, him doing this dyno test with those. But yes, these are those stock versus aftermarket. By the way, just for the price difference, for you, so you understand, I think he paid $1,500 for these, which seems kind of high because you can get some other heads that will outflow this and probably will make more power. But if you're really wanting to go after the look, there you go. So about $1,500. These, I think he picked up from Marketplace relatively cheap, but by the time you have all the machine work done to them and stuff, I'm going to guess, because I don't know how much he paid. I know kind of what I'm charging. I'm going to guess these are somewhere around the neighborhood of $800 with all the machine work. With the valves and stuff, he's probably close to $1,000. So even though these seem really expensive, it's only $500 more than probably doing those. And I'm betting these are going to make more power, especially since you got compression and you got airflow. Things are looking positive. Port design's much better too. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Remember, I do not port cast iron heads. I'm No Superman. You guys take care.